Inconsistency dogs the Canucks yet again. They follow up a good win over the Oilers with a 3-2 loss to the Buffalo Sabres. Let's get into it. This is Rink Wide Vancouver. And we welcome you inside the Rink Wide Vancouver studios on a Tuesday night. A disappointing night of hockey for the Vancouver Canucks. How many times have we said that about games at Rogers Arena? 3-2, the Sabres come to town off back-to-back games, or in back-to-back games after a loss in Seattle. And the Sabres take over in the third period, score 2 unanswered goals. They beat the Canucks 3-2. It's Jeff and it's Irf here. And yes, the Vancouver Canucks continue to give us plenty to talk about. Unfortunately, when you want to give them the benefit of the doubt about building off wins, they did it against Toronto in that Saturday night game, the center of the universe, and what happened? Got curb stomped by the Jets and the Kings.
Yeah.
They respond with a pretty good win over the Edmonton Oilers with all the extracurriculars, trying to post back-to-back victories on home ice for the first time all season and consecutive wins for the first time since December. Well, you can flush. That was my weak attempt at the sound effect of a toilet, but that's where this one ends up. It is Rink Wide Vancouver. It's a presentation of Bet365. Whatever the moment, it is never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you open an account. The chat is going on our YouTube live stream. You know the drill by now. If you want to get your comments or your questions read here on Rink Wide, hit us up with a super chat. Our charity partner this season, the BC Mental Health Foundation, changing the face of mental health and addiction by supporting breakthroughs in care, public understanding, research, and knowledge exchange. Or if what happened, it was 2-1 Canucks in the third period. That's got to be money in the bank, right?
Inconsistent team. I think you and I talked about it at the 41 game mark. What is their identity? Their identity is that they are one of the most inconsistent teams in the National Hockey League, and their play shows. You take a lead going into the third period on home ice, Jeff. You should be able to see this one out. I know there's no easy out in the NHL. I do understand that. But it's the Vancouver Canucks. It's the Buffalo Sabres. Like, you should be able to win this hockey game and see this one through, and the Canucks weren't able to do it. On a night where you get points from Besser, Miller, Pedersen, Hughes. Like, their big guns came to play. Fortunately, it cost them in the end.
Well, one of the storylines without Tyler Myers was going to be depth defense, and you look at the right side, and it was Philip Hronek, and then it was Vinny Desharnais and Mark Friedman. And yet, guess who's out on the ice for the 2-2 tying goal? It was Hughes and Hronek that get picked apart there. Quinn Hughes. And look, bad nights happen. And, like, I don't want to sound like I'm hitting any kind of alarm or panic button here, but Captain was on the ice for all 3 of the Buffalo goals tonight. So he plays, and he plays a lot. He's played better than he did in this hockey game, that is for sure. And I know he gets the primary assist on the Pedersen goal, and he was dealing on that shift. He nearly set up Brock Besser, carries on, finds Pedersen, and is able to snap it home. And at that point, you thought, okay, Canucks are rolling. Like, they had erased the 1-0 deficit. Took them a while. It was, the first period was a dud. The capital D, 2 capital Ds and a capital U in the middle there. Nothing. I mean, Sabres opened the scoring late in the first, but like, even my notes, like, I had nothing written down from the first period of play. And at one point, I texted you. I said, feel free to start the show because you start without me because there ain't nothing happening here. This thing was not an oil painting, although I bet it feels pretty damn good in the Sabres dressing room. It probably looks a lot better to Lindy Ruff and his hockey club than it does to Rick Tocchet. Really curious to get to Rick Tocchet when he gets to the podium. We'll certainly bring you some of the quotes, and if we have an opportunity, we'll play you his podium session. But this sucks. It does. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. Like, this is a team that has to get some momentum. They've got to string some wins together, and their general manager stood in there for 20 minutes at the microphones yesterday and tried to tell us all that he believes in this group and all is fine and they're going to get it together. And, oh, yeah, he firmly believes that this is a playoff team. Well, guess what? They're not a playoff team unless they get above the playoff bar. And this felt like the sitter in this gauntlet of games that continues into Edmonton, and a few storylines for that one.
Yeah.
And then the Caps come calling on Saturday night, and then the Canucks are back out on the road. This was supposed to be 2 points that they put in the pocket. Didn't matter what it looked like. Just get the win, get a couple of wins, get some good vibrations, get some good momentum. get that good feeling going again. I mean, we keep hearing it. We hear it from the players themselves. So much noise around. They know the best way to silence the noise is to string some wins together, but they are simply incapable of doing it.
Yeah, and I think that's the most frustrating part. Like, you look at the effort against the Edmonton Oilers, and how do they not carry away that performance? Like, they were good offensively. They shut it down when they needed to. The Oilers' best players, they were held in check. And then you have the momentum of that. You come into this game against the Buffalo Sabres, as you just mentioned, probably a sitter, right? On the schedule, you look at it and say, this is one of those nights where we can go get it. And they had the chance to do it. You got the contributions. You got the stuff from your top guys. And unfortunately, I'm going to put this one a little bit on the defenseman and Quinn Hughes. And I'm not going to say that, he's playing too much or any of that, or he's getting tired. But, on the ice for 2 goals against isn't good, right? I don't think that is. 26-10 of ice time. He's allowed to have bad games. He's a Hart Trophy candidate. He's a Norris Trophy winner. But it just wasn't a good night for Quinn Hughes. And you're going to have those in the grind of the season. The offensive guys were there. I mean, did Philip Roenick miss a sitter to end it, potentially? He absolutely did. Did Brock Besser have chances? Yeah. Did Elias Pettersson have chances? Yeah. But
I don't want to talk about chances. I don't. I want to talk about goals. Sabres, there are only 2 teams in the league that give up more goals on average than the Buffalo Sabres. Yeah. Seattle pumped them for 6 last night. And, they got Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen back in goal. He's their number 1 guy. He gives up 2 in the first half of the game, but then doesn't give up another. We can talk about Thatcher Demko's performance. That 2-2 goal where Hughes and Hronek get separated. Could have used a save there, let's be honest. Demko deep in the net, and I guess he's not expecting the quick centering pass. Whatever the case, somewhere along the line, you just keep wanting to believe that Canucks goaltending is going to give them an edge compared to what's happening at the other end of the ice. But it hasn't happened nearly enough here recently. And for Thatcher Demko, started playing him in 3 straight for the first time this season, trying to get him on an individual run as well. And he's got 3 victories in 11 starts. He's got 3 wins. Like, that's not going to get him and them where they need to go. And so, you look at the first goal, right off a face-off, quick snapshot, and it's Tage Thompson. He's got 21 goals, leads the team in goals. Nice shot. Brock kind of got caught in no man's land a little bit. Again, a shot from distance. You'd like to think at this level that that's stoppable, but again, Tage Thompson's a goal scorer, gets paid to score, and has beaten a lot of good goaltenders. So I'm sort of torn there. I'm not dumping that one on Thatcher Demko, but when you look at the goals that were scored, the 5 that the Kings scored on him off the rush, a ton. There wasn't a whole lot there that I had an issue with, and that's why I thought coming back with him against the Oilers made sense. And they wanted to build him up and get him running here. The Coolidge goal, we just talked about that, and then Peterka, the breakdown start there. Again, the tough night for Quinn Hughes. He ices the puck. Now, it looked like he for sure would have had a chance to tip it in the neutral zone. Didn't happen. Little miscommunication. So faceoff comes back. Canucks can't get the change. Sabres get the guys they want out there. And again, win the faceoff. Bang, bang. It's Peterka, his 11th of the year. But there's still 6.5 minutes to go. And really, as I look through my notes, the Hughes to Hronek chance with about 5.5 left. And then Elias Pettersson tipped the Quinn Hughes shot that found its way to the front of the net, but that's as far as it got. Really never threatened to get in. And so, the Canucks kind of juiced the shot totals late in the hockey game. Finish up with 12 in the third period, 33-27 on the night, but they can only score, I was going to say that would be 4 if I hold up 2 fingers on each hand. They only scored 2. That's it. 2 goals against the Buffalo Sabres.
It's not enough. It's not enough. It is not enough, especially if you can't stop them on the other side. We made so much talk about how this team was so good in 1-goal hockey games, how they were comfortable playing in these games, and how they could get the saves from their goaltender and things like that, and they're not. They're not getting the saves from Thatcher Demko. He hasn't been spectacular by any means. I mean, Kevin Lankinen, obviously was sick, so they had to bring up Shelovs as the emergency backup. But of late, I mean, Lankinen hasn't been great either. So you look at it and say, okay, we're not getting the goaltending we need. The defense we already know is a weak link of our hockey team. your offensive guys need to do more. I mentioned, the chances. You said no, goals. And that's what it is. That's the name of the game. You have a chance on the power play. You should be able to score with the personnel that you have. A little bit of systems, I think. It's guys not doing their jobs again. Not getting yourselves into areas, not getting yourselves in shooting lanes, not putting yourself in the right position to score. And that's kind of the downfall of this team of late is guys are just going out there and really not executing whatever system they think that Rick Tocchet is trying to have this team play.
Yeah, look, lots of people have dumped on the Canucks for lack of shots. They had 33 shots.
Yeah.
You should be able to score more than twice. And they had some opportunities. We can run through some of those. I see Thatcher Demko quoted after the game. It comes down to us in the room. We have to man up a little. I don't think I've been good enough. It's been a challenging year dating back to the summer, so a little bit of ownership there. But ultimately, whatever he says after a game, it's just talk.
Doesn't matter.
It's what happens on the ice. And, they've got a decision to go now. Is it Lankinen if he's healthy enough on Thursday, or do you just keep running Demko here for a little while? I guess we'll find out in the days ahead. I just wanted to mention Canucks stuck on 20 wins. They got 20 wins the other night with the victory over the Oilers. 20 wins, 16 outright losses now, and 10 in the OTL category. So 20, 16, and 10, 50 points, and at home, and cover your ears if you don't want to hear it. Generally, 8 wins. 8 home ice wins in 24 games, one of every 3 games. 8, 10, and 6 now at home. That's some big money. People put out huge money on Sunday to celebrate the Canucks at Dyson Ice. A lot of those people are season ticket holders that are spending big money for those club seats.
Yep.
And they are not getting their money's worth. This was not an entertaining game. The game against the Oilers had some juice and some jump, and obviously the late game fireworks. This one, Sabres on a Tuesday, coming off back-to-back. And look, the Sabres weren't good in Seattle. Lindy Ruff ripped them, skated them hard this morning. You generally don't see that in back-to-backs and on game day, but I think he was trying to deliver a message. So you knew that the Sabres would probably be a tighter bunch, and they were. And I'll give them credit. They're not going anywhere. They're last in the East. They're down, long way from home, late at night for them on their body clock. They're down going to the third period. If they had gone quietly, would anybody really have cared? Probably not.
Yeah.
So, good on the Sabres. I'll give those guys credit. But we focus on the Canucks here on Rink Wide. And, again, just so highly disappointing, not just at home, but, again, for the people that pay the money. They haven't won back-to-back games since December the 1st, and you have to go back a week and a half before that to find the last time that they won back-to-back in regulation. So it's just becoming way too easy to play the Canucks. If you play the Canucks, pretty good chance you're getting points off them. And that was the case here again tonight.
There is nobody in the NHL that fears this team.
No.
There is absolutely no opponent that fears this hockey team.
And
on a team that has Elias Pettersson, JT Miller, Quinn Hughes, Jake DeBrusk, Brock Besser, Thatcher Demko.
They've got them all. Dakota Joshua, they've got them all. I guess Tyler Myers was suspended, but
when they could have used them, to be honest. They're not feared. And you said something interesting there. Tuesday night in January. Mm-hmm. This is a game where even though you had the emotional win on Saturday and everything that happened after that and whatever was happening today and everyone's looking forward to this game, you still have to go out and take care of business. I don't care what's about to happen and what you're going to walk into on Thursday, and we all know everyone's going to talk about it for the next 2 days. You still have business to take care of. You have 8 wins, on home ice. You're playing against one of the worst teams in the National Hockey League. You have to do something better for your paying customer.
First outright loss.
Wasn't even entertaining either.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
If you lose, and they have, and there have been a few games where they've come up, opening night against Calgary was highly disappointing, but it was a hell of an entertainment spectacle. This was the old proverbial paint drying, but the Sabres don't care what it looks like. Look pretty good to them. Not so much to the Canucks and their fans. First outright loss when leading after 2. They're 15-1-6 now on the season, but that's 7 games that the Canucks haven't been able to see through to the end. And Nick Postchek in our chat saying, remember when Alvin and Rutherford carved Boudreau repeatedly for his team's blowing leads? Yes, they would go on radio. They would tell anybody that would listen that it was unacceptable. What happened to that accountability? And it's a fair question. Since Christmas, there was the lead that absolutely got away against Seattle, a couple of goal lead in Montreal that ended up in an overtime loss, this one here tonight. So It's not a blip. It's not a one-off. I mean, this is who they are. They're so unpredictable and just so damn inconsistent. Ultimately, we got a super chat.
Got a super chat, yeah.
Yeah. Domaniac Studios, with the JT and EP drama falling behind us, this team needs to focus, which doesn't seem to be happening. So many great games followed by terrible ones. And I wrote about this on Sunday in the wake of the Oilers win. It was the game against Edmonton was certainly something to build on, but would they? And the answer clearly is no. And then you go back through the history books here. Really good win in Los Angeles. At the end of that 3-game California trip, and the Kings obviously were the toughest of the 3 Cali opponents, but full value for a win in Edmonton against Los Angeles, in Los Angeles. They come back home and the Oilers absolutely pounded them. There was the win over the Florida Panthers in mid-December.
Yep.
And we all thought, something to build on. And then 2 nights later, Boston just ran them out of the rink. And they followed that up with the win over Colorado, and they're back, look out. Yep. And then they go to Utah, and they flush a 2-0 third-period lead there and lose in overtime. Then you get the Toronto game a couple of nights or weeks ago, and what happened in Winnipeg, and then this one. So you can point to all these victories that should have been some sort of turning point and a stepping stone, and they turn a corner and they run headlong into a wall. It's what happens to this group, and they're the authors of their own demise. Nobody to blame but themselves. A way more talented team than the Buffalo Sabres, and yet ultimately, if talent doesn't do enough, and you let the other team hang around, you get what you deserve on a night like tonight.
Absolutely. That's literally what happened. They got exactly what they deserved. They stopped playing after the second period, and Buffalo took it to them. Credit to the Buffalo Sabres. You mentioned that Lindy Ruff, they were pissed about the game the other night. They were skated hard this morning. They knew they wanted to, leave Vancouver on a good note, and they ended up doing that. And the Vancouver Canucks just didn't want it. And you could tell. And, it's nice to hear from Thatcher Demko that he's taken a little bit of accountability and ownership, and he didn't like the way that he played. Is he going to get a run of games here? Is that going to have to happen? Like we talked about it, I remember earlier, is there going to be some sort of goaltending situation where you want to get your Vezina guy to a point where he's playing at that caliber? Now he's saying he doesn't play better, and it's kind of taken him a while, but do you feel like you need to give him some?
Well, yeah, like I'm fully behind this idea of if they're going to get on a second half run, that I think what you've got in Kevin Lankinen, and for the most part, I agree with you. Like early in the season, he was lights out. I think his play has dropped a little bit, and certainly isn't delivering the wins at the rate that he was in the early going. But I think there's still stability there. You kind of know what you're getting in Lankinen. Demko is a bit of a wild card in as much as what he's done in the past when he's at the top of his game, but we also know the history here of the last 8 months, what he's been through. And as I said, this is 11 starts, 10 finished games because he came out of the game in Seattle. So this is a 10-game body of work now with 3 victories. I just don't know. I don't know if he's getting back to the levels as he was at last year. I hope for his sake he does, but that may have been the pinnacle for him in the National Hockey League for all we know. And so to say, hey, he's done it in the past, it's a baseline, but he's been, as he put it, through hell. I just don't know. But right now, he's not a Vezina finalist, and he's not playing at that level. And so do you keep giving him opportunities and keep giving him the leash? Or, are you better off to get into a job swap and alternate? And I don't know. These are tough calls because just the way that they're handling their goaltending isn't giving them the advantage that they hoped that it would to this point of the season. Let's get to the 3 stars of this hockey game.
Yep.
The 3 stars are a presentation of Greta Bar, YVR, and we're going to have the Canucks Army viewing party there on Thursday. 3 stars in the building: Yuri Kulich, JJ Peterka, and Elias Pettersson. We kind of go in that direction. Kulich has the goal, and he also has 2 assists, so he's in on all 3 of the Buffalo goals. He missed a handful of games here. He's back, and I'm sure they're delighted to have him. Not a lot known about Yuri Kulich outside of Buffalo, but certainly was a factor in this hockey game. Ends up being the first star. JJ Peterka, he's got the game winner, and he also had an assist, so A nice night for him. And Brock Besser, looks like Brock Besser the fifth on our graphic.
I was going to say.
Royalty. Brock Besser had an assist. He almost scored on the sequence that led to the Elias Pettersson goal, so Besser nearly scored. He does get the second assist on the play, but more than that, he had 8 shots on goal.
Yeah.
That's a season high for him. It's 2 off his career high in the regular season. I like when Brock Besser's shooting the puck.
Yeah.
And that's his game. He's a volume shooter. Obviously, a season high. Prior to this, it was 5. So he outdid himself and then some. But if Brock Besser's getting 8 shots on goal, Irv, got to find one that finds the back of the net.
And when Brock Besser's shooting that much, it means he's feeling it. It means he's feeling some sort of way. He's feeling a little bit better. But we can sit here and, like you just mentioned, talk about shots and attempted shots and blocked shots and all of that. 2 goals against the Buffalo Sabres is not going to cut it.
No.
Because your opponent on Thursday night is going to be angry. They're going to be coming for you in more ways than one. I really do think that it's going to be an interesting hockey game to look forward to. And the Canucks, if they can't generate any offense against the Buffalo Sabres or lock it down in the third period, like, what are you going to do against the Edmonton Oilers? What are you going to do against the Washington Capitals, who have a goaltender who doesn't give up goals?
Yeah. No, that's what I said. Like, this gauntlet continues now. This was supposed to be a little bit of a breather.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the Sabres. Just take your 2 points. And you're right. Like, the Canucks locked it down so well on Saturday against the Edmonton Oilers that up 2-1 going to the third, you thought, okay, this is staples and structure and board work and all the Rick Tocchet stuff. And instead, they just go and basically roll over in the third period. Why didn't Connor Garland just sit on the puck for 20 minutes in the third period? No? No? Okay.
He was sitting on the corner of the post, and he had a chance to score like he did the other that one time.
That was going to be the strategy. Just get Connor Garland to go out there and hold down all the Sabres in the high slot. The 3 stars, by the way, brought to you by Greta Bar, and we talk about it on every episode. Terrific place to watch the game. If you've been there, you know what we're talking about, and if you haven't, well, you're missing out. Go check it out. The big screens, the arcade games, terrific new street food menu, weekly drink specials, and that Canucks Army viewing party. We'll tell you more about that. There is still time to grab some tickets. We'll get to that a little later on. Greta Bar, place to be, 50 West Cordova. Greta Bar, let the games begin.
Rick Tocchet is at the podium right now, and I always like asking you what you like, what you hate from the game. It's he's quoted as saying, "It's a microcosm of our season," says Rick Tocchet about the Canucks loss. I hate that answer because.
But he's not wrong.
I agree, but you have to, in order to be a coach and to be management, like, do something about it. It's almost, the onus is on the players at the end of it. It really is. But you can't keep up going there to the podium. The players can't keep up going up there to doing all these media availabilities, saying that, oh, it's just one of those. It's just one of those nights.
Well, we'll see what else he has to say, and hopefully we'll get a chance to hear from him in his own words as we move along here on Rink Wide. I do want to touch on the 2 Canuck goals because we've talked about the Sabres and things that went wrong for the Vancouver Canucks. Unlike the hero, or at least a suspect to score, Phil DiGiuseppe gets his first of the season, his first in the National Hockey League since March the 9th, that 5-0 win over Winnipeg last season, the night that Thatcher Demko got hurt and wasn't seen until the final week of the regular season. So it had been a while. Last March since Phil found the back of the net, but I thought nice play by Carson Soucy there. Shot goes wide, takes a bit of a Canuck bounce off the end boards because Luukkonen looks over his right shoulder as that puck comes out on the same side that it had gone over the net, and there was DiGiuseppe on the back end. JT Miller gets the second assist there, and that tied the game 3:05 into the second period, and it seemed to settle the Canucks down. Again, there wasn't a whole lot happening in this hockey game. They needed something good to go their way, and to get a goal from an unlikely suspect, hey, you take it, and you build on it, and they did do that. And, 7 minutes later, it was the sequence that we talked about. They were buzzing, and if it wasn't Besser, then Hughes just stayed with the play. Kulik had lost his stick, and we see this more and more in hockey, and it makes perfect sense. Like, when teams identify that one of the defending players is without a stick, I mean, they try to maximize that and capitalize on it, and the Canucks did that. I mean, they worked the puck around. Kulich is basically defenseless out there, and they made him pay.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you get the puck to Elias Pettersson, time and space, and that's that wrist shot you're looking for. Saw it in the San Jose game before Christmas. That was the last time that Elias Pettersson had put a puck in the net, so it had taken way too long. I mean, we're past the midway mark of the season, Irf, and he's got 11 goals. But you see him shoot the puck like that and find his spot, and you think, like, how can he not score more often than he has to this point? Again, you get a goal from Elias Pettersson, and Hughes is buzzing, and you're thinking, like, okay, best players are digging in here. It's starting to turn the Canucks' way, and who would have thought that midway through the second, that was the last Canuck goal of the night that we were going to see? But
They haven't scored more than 3 goals in 7 straight games. Lost 7-9. It's not going to cut it in this National Hockey League where teams are scoring, and when they're not scoring, they don't give you much at all, so you have to create your own offense.
Yep.
Those are 2 ugly stats that people aren't going to like. Vancouver loses when leading after 2 periods for the 7th time this season.
Yeah. I mean, first in regulation, but still, that's 7 times that they've had leads going to the third that, you know, the record should be better than that. Last year, obviously, it was. They were automatic when they took a lead in the third period. That hasn't been the case. A couple other things in the second period. Right after the Canucks took the 2-1 lead, JT Miller and Quinn Hughes collided at center ice, and it allowed Dylan Cousins to get in behind Canucks defense. Had a pretty good opportunity there. Couldn't capitalize. A few minutes later, Alex tucked down the left side, 2-on-1. He holds onto the puck. He shoots, big rebound, and Cousins charging hard to the net, and it just skipped over his stick. He had the wide open net. And again, you're thinking, like, all right, some of these are bounces that are going the Canucks' way. Like, it's kind of feeling like maybe it's their night. Wasn't the case. Quinn Hughes takes the holding penalty on Peterka late in the period. Sabres didn't do much with their power play. Neither team did much with the power play. In fact, the Canucks, some of their most dangerous chances after the 2-1 goal were shorthanded. Pius Suter with Bluger, and he hit sort of the outside of the post, but made a nice play to cut to the middle and create a little ice for himself. And then in the third period, Soucy takes the holding penalty, and it was Kiefer Sherwood and Danton Heinen that came pretty close. But again, close doesn't cut it for the Vancouver Canucks. You can sit here and point out all the chances they had. They didn't do enough with the chances that they got. No,
and we're going to sit here and talk about this again. I'm sure we're going to have this conversation because that's just kind of the way that this season's gone for this Vancouver Canucks team, right? Inconsistent. Vancouver inconsistent. That's what someone said in our chat. We got another super chat, do we, Jeff, from Blue Line Bar Down. Big one there. Thank you very much for that. Guys, I've never seen them this low. Zero confidence. In all seriousness, Tocchet loses his job, right? He looks shook in the presser. A coach with no confidence. Is he done? I don't know that Rick Tocchet's done. I think that's a decision that is going to be made by him and by the team well into the summer. But there's definitely some thought out there that, you know, that he could be thinking about it, that there might be something. Is a new coach, if you're asking me if players are tuned out the coach or stuff like that, I don't entirely think so. I think that this team has just gone through a lot this season, both on the ice, off the ice, in the room, which is a complete joke right now. And the head coach has taken some heat for it. And the head coach is now, I think, a little bit lost for answers as to what to do.
Thanks for the super chat. Again, proceeds going to the BC Mental Health Foundation, so we really do appreciate your contributions. And that's not the first time we've heard from Blue Line Bar Down making a donation. I will agree, though, that right now at the podium, like Rick Tocchet used to be appointment viewing and listening. Yeah. He was so engaging. He was so enthusiastic. The passion just came through for the job and the opportunity and the teaching moments and all that. And he does sound like he's out of answers. And that's a dangerous place because the coach's job ultimately is to have answers. You're not going to win every game, but your job is to figure out why things aren't going right, address them, and ultimately fix them. And so you can see and feel the frustration of Rick Tocchet that this sort of does feel like it's out of his control now. And I'm not saying that he's lost the team, but it feels like he's grasping for answers. And, you know, I'm not expecting an in-season coaching change.
No.
This is Alvin and Rutherford's handpicked guy. He's not even 2 years on the job. Like, we're days away from the 2-year anniversary of him being hired. So, like, he's not at the end of his line here in Vancouver. I also don't think that ownership has any interest in paying yet another coach, even if, you know, there's only the remainder of this season left, and then there's the team option for Rick Tocchet. Now, Patrick Alvin addressed that yesterday. Rick Tocchet was asked about it. Tocchet saying, people didn't see the quote. He said, honestly, he gives it no thought, that his job right now is living in the moment and trying to figure out this team. And again, he's not coming up with answers on a night like this one. But no, he's not getting fired. He's certainly not getting fired in season. I think all bets are off when the season comes to an end, and we'll see where they are in relation to the playoff bar. And certainly if they fall short of the playoffs, then Tocchet's got some things to think about. The organization has some things to think about. And by then he's 2.5 years on the job.
Yeah.
And we talked about this the other night with Patrick. Like the shelf life of an NHL coach now, very few get to a fourth season. Like 3 seems to be the magic number for Rick Tocchet. This is soon to be 2.5. So, at the end of the year, if they fall short of if this team, when you think of the expectations at the outset, if they fall short, then yes, I think all bets are off.
It's so wild to have this conversation right now. Here we are, January 21st. This team has 8 home wins on home ice. We're talking to everyone in the chat and people around in different parts of that cover this team, and even around the National Hockey League are, mentioning big trades and shakeups and things like that. They still are 1 point behind the Calgary Flames. Like they're right in it. And they're not. I don't believe that the in-season coaching change is what is going to fix this team, because you look at candidates out there right now. I agree with you. I don't think that ownership wants to pay what one of these candidates coming in is going to want or command as a salary. I just don't think that's going to happen. And you're going to give Rick a chance, right? A chance to prove people differently, a chance to go in and try and see if he can right this ship. They're still very much in it. And, you got to think that he's got enough horses in the stable to be able to go and do that.
And I hear everything you're saying there, but this idea that they're very much in it, they're a point behind the Calgary Flames past the midway mark, and you already touched on it right off the hop, Irf. So what if they get it as the second wild card?
That's true.
They're going to face Vegas or Winnipeg probably.
They're going to get smoked.
Right. So, yes, in pure math, they're a single point below the playoff bar right now. They're right there. But, just project out. This doesn't look like this team that can't string wins together. Well, if you're the lower seed, you would have to win 1 on the road, certainly. But the way they play at home, coming on
there's
home,
no guarantees
just
you're winning
stay
at home.
on the road.
Yeah.
But you got to win 4 of 7 against a really good team. So, yes, they remain a single point behind the playoff bar. They will sleep outside of the playoffs yet again. But now they've given up games. Calgary has a game in hand on the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah.
And so you got to be mindful of not just the point column, but also the games played. They're tied with the St. Louis Blues. They're going to see the Blues in St. Louis to start a 3-game road trip after the game against the Washington Capitals. So a big game in St. Louis to start the road trip there. And, of course, the Utah Hockey Club within striking distance, same number of games played as well. Utah beat Winnipeg. Calgary beat Winnipeg. Canucks didn't beat Winnipeg. So the Canucks right now are basically just treading water. It's 1 step forward, 1 step back, and 3 wins in 10 games. That's a difficult way to claw your way back above the playoff bar and ultimately into the playoff picture. If you're winning 3 out of every 10 games, it ain't going to happen for you if you're the Vancouver Canucks.
All right, well, let me ask you this then, Jeff. Where is the biggest level of concern then at this point? Is it defense? Or is it not being able to score goals? It has to be that.
I think it remains that ultimately 2 guys are so ineffective offensively. And it's a greater issue for the team as a whole. Mm-hmm. Brock Besser, 8 shots on goal and no goals. You got to find ways to score, but they had 33 shots. So the group that's got the pitchforks out for Rick Tocchet because they don't get enough shots, they got enough shots in this hockey game. But if it's a point here and a point there for Pettersson and Miller, where are these nights of taking over a hockey game? JT had the 4 in Montreal and really has done next to nothing. We keep coming back. Those 2 goals that he scored in Montreal, the only goals that he has scored since the middle of November. He hasn't scored a goal at home. We talk about the problems on home ice. JT Miller hasn't scored since an empty net goal against the Chicago Blackhawks on November 16th at Rogers Arena. The home fans haven't seen for all the big old chants of JT Miller, and those, by the way, have, they're not at the level that they once were in that building. And I think a lot of that's about the uncertainty and just sort of where he is and where this team is. But again, like there are guys around the league that are commanding games, taking them over one-man show. And we see that sometimes from Quinn Hughes, but two guys that have both been 100-point scorers in the last couple of seasons, and it's just a drop in the bucket from night to night. Again, it's pretty damn hard to win hockey games. Sure, you're going to win the occasional game, but in terms of rising up and really asserting your dominance individually and as a group, it's just way too hard if your best players are not your best players, and that's been the case pretty much all season. So, yes, this team needs help defensively, but I think since Christmas, my concern has been way more about the individuals, the drama, obviously, that's overshadowed all of this. They played through it the other night, but they didn't in this one, and so it is a microcosm of the season, to quote Rick Tocchet, and I get where he's coming from, but ultimately that's not an explanation, or it sounds like an excuse, quite frankly. And now, as you mentioned, into Edmonton, where they're going into the Hornets' nest.
Yeah. 16 goals in 60 regular season games since signing his contract for Elias Pettersson. We do have Thatcher Demko post-game ready, so let's hear from the Canucks goaltender.
Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing. I think I just got to try and get a piece of one of those in the third, got a piece of the first one and snuck through, and so it's disappointing. I didn't think we played a bad game, so things have built off, I think, with the tape, and look at the tape tomorrow.
There's been so much talk about consistency over the last few weeks. What do you guys need to do to find that consistency game to game?
I mean, it's a tricky one. I don't think there's any, finite answer, tangible thing that you can kind of pinpoint. It just comes down to us in the room. I think that's the best way I can put it. We got to man up a little bit, and certainly myself included. I mean, I don't think I've been good enough this year so far. So I got to keep working to find that level that I know I can get to, and I'll be the first guy working on my game day in and day out. So focus on myself and focus on my game, and I think everyone does that, then we'll be okay.
Rick was saying earlier today that he wants to get you kind of on a run here. Where do you feel like your game is at? And does playing a little bit more help?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't think I've been good enough this year. Obviously, it's been a challenging year, dating back to the summer. So, I mean, obviously it's been a lot of soul searching for me over the last few months, and I don't know how else to put it. I just haven't been good enough so far. So, take it day by day, and I know I'm putting in the work, so it'll come.
Just getting into that rhythm and playing more often though help that?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, it's kind of been my role over the last several years is kind of just carrying the workload. So, I mean, it's been an odd year in that sense. Just I came back a few games before Christmas break and then missed 2 games. It just feels like a little bit of back and forth, but. I mean, that's irrelevant to me. I got to show up when my name's called, and I got to do a better job.
I mean, that's accountability.
Yep.
I'll give him that much, that certainly not ducking it. We haven't heard from him in a little while. I mean, there wasn't local media in Carolina the night that he played, and actually played pretty well there. Can't be expected to score when they lost 2-0. And then the other night against the Kings, there were a lot of other questions swirling, and after the Oilers game as well. So we hadn't heard. I mean, for whatever reason, hadn't heard from Thatcher Demko for a while. I'll give him credit. Like, he talked about everybody needs to man up. Post game, he did. But it's what happens out on the ice, and as he said, like, he knows that he had to find a way. He's got to be better. I'm sure he's got his fingers crossed. The organization has its fingers crossed. But based on his first 11 starts of the season, it hasn't been good enough.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I think the positive we can take from that is he owned it, right? We haven't seen that from Thatcher Demko a lot. I think that through the injury and through everything that he's been through in his rehab and kind of losing the starting job and not being the guy that you think you can be and knowing that you're going to have to play with something has really humbled him a little bit. I think a little bit for sure, and you can kind of tell that the way that he does meet the media and he's able to go out there and kind of take accountability and say what's wrong with his game and how he wants to work on it. But in the end, like Thatcher Demko only let in 3 goals, and the Canucks could only score 2 to help him. They haven't scored more than 3 in 7 games, right?
Yep. And the other night, gives up 5 against the Kings. Again, individually, the goals, I didn't have a huge issue, but you're not going to win when your goalie's giving up 5 very often. Unless you're Nashville and spot San Jose 5, and then you come roaring back and win 7-5. That was the wild night that was everything this game wasn't, quite frankly. And look, I'm there at practices. I can confirm, like, he is putting in the work on the ice. I'm sure he's doing it off the ice as well. But even that's not paying the dividend. You got to do it, obviously. And he is. But it does become a question of, can he turn his season around, and ultimately, if he does and his play improves, can that turn the Vancouver Canucks season in the right direction? It's not like they have to turn it around, but they've got to string some wins together. Mm-hmm. And so we'll see if he gets the start in Edmonton, or if they go to Lankinen. Maybe they've got a plan here, so hard to know exactly what Rick Tocchet is thinking, but again, pick your poison. You got the Oilers, and you got the Capitals, and then out on the road, St. Louis, Nashville, and their first look of the season at the Dallas Stars, the tail end of that 3-game road trip. Busy night around the National Hockey League. I'm sure there were Canuck fans that were keeping an eye on the out-of-town scoreboard. The Washington Capitals beat the Edmonton Oilers, so the Oilers lost here on Saturday. They go home and they lose by that same 3-2 score. Yes, Leon Draisaitl scored again, opened the scoring. And then Corey Perry scored later. So in the last 2 games, Corey Perry's the only Oiler outside of Leon Draisaitl that has scored. And, of course, they're going to be without McDavid for the next couple. We talked about Nashville beating San Jose by a score of 7-5. New York Rangers, go figure them. Their season's in the toilet, and yet they pump Ottawa 5-zip. Game got a little squirrely. I saw Igor Shesterkin going
after Brady Tkachuk.
Yeah. But ultimately, the game that we're talking about is the Vancouver Canucks falling 3-2 at home to the Buffalo Sabres. So Sabres take 3 or 4 points off the Canucks. Canucks get 2 from the overtime win. Connor Garland scored the winner in Buffalo. When was that? Back in late November, I think it was. Thanksgiving weekend in the U.S.
Almost scored the exact same type of goal tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like most teams are taking points off the Buffalo Sabres. Sabres aren't as low as when they lost 13 straight there before Christmas, but they're still the Sabres, and they had lost 3 of 4 coming in, and again got worked in Seattle, and none of that mattered because they beat the Vancouver Canucks with 2 third-period goals. 3-2 is the final. All right, Irf, you're looking ahead now.
Yep.
You always try to give people a little tip or two to think about. The line of the night brought to you by Bet365. What has your attention on the NHL schedule?
Yeah, absolutely. Open account with Bet365 today, but on a huge range of markets. Use the code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. I like the Colorado Avalanche at home against the Winnipeg Jets and the Florida Panthers on the money line in LA. They just played against the Anaheim Ducks, but giving me the Stanley Cup champions as a underdog, I'm going to take that all day long. Little sneaky parlay. This one's small. It didn't go crazy. There's only 4 games. Hated the other 2. Some nights are going to be big. Some nights are going to be small, but can't win them all unless you try.
Colorado-Winnipeg will be interesting because the Jets were not happy with their performance against the hockey club in Salt Lake City, so we'll see about them bouncing back. We got to do our stat that stands out. We haven't done that yet on tonight's program, so I do want to get to that. And we talked about the fact that the Canucks lost when Miller and Pettersson and Besser and Hughes were all on the score sheet together for the first time since that game against San Jose, December 23rd, the game before Christmas. So since Christmas, this is the first time that the Vancouver Canucks top 4 players, not necessarily the top 4 scorers because Connor Garland's in the mix there, but when you think of their top 4 players, Miller, Pettersson, Besser, and Hughes, they get on the score sheet together, and it still doesn't mean anything. And that's the frustration with this hockey club. You keep looking for something that's going to provide that spark. And, okay, so you get these guys involved in the scoring. You get a Pettersson goal for the first time since that December 23rd game that he left and then missed the 6 games right out of the Christmas break. They're all back. They're healthy. And it's still not enough to get it done against the Buffalo Sabres. But absolutely, that's a stat that stands out when you're going basically a month between games. And again, they didn't play them all. Hughes missed a little bit of time in there as well. But the fact is that it's been nearly a calendar month, and that's the first time that the 4 of them have found the score sheet. Like, that has to be on the regular here for the Vancouver Canucks to start moving in the right direction. And who knows how long the 4 of them are going to play together.
Yeah. Like, you know how many times that, I mean, maybe it's a bad example, but Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, every other night they're on the score sheet.
Right.
The Colorado Avalanche, Mikko Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon, they're on the score sheet every single night.
And
you
Makar, right.
And Makar, yeah. You go through teams in the National Hockey League of guys and their superstars and them combining for goals and their power plays cooking, being on the score sheet every single night.
You are so right.
Yeah,
Yep.
and the Canucks just don't have that. And furthering that point, when the Stars aren't doing well, they don't have enough depth in the forwards to be able to carry that team. So I think that's where the problem is too. Is as much as if your star guys aren't going, Jeff, you don't have the slack, you don't have the juice in the bottom 6 of that 4 group to be able to go and carry the load there.
Yeah, and look, it cuts both ways. We've seen it from Jake DeBrusk, 9 games right off the hop without a goal. He's up to 7 now without a goal. Like, he's kind of gone back into wrong way.
Yeah.
Streaky Jake DeBrusk, and a goal in a game like this one could have done a ton. Just get back to the idea of stars. Like, if you need an example of why this season is sort of off the rails for the Vancouver Canucks, Elias Pettersson and JT Miller have scored on a goaltender in the same game once. All year!
It's unbelievable.
Against the Pittsburgh Penguins back in October. They also scored in the same game against Chicago, but Miller's goal was into an empty net. Like, right there. You're right. The Stars carry you. And Miller and Pettersson have scored on a goaltender in the same game once. Miller and Besser have done it twice on opening night and then a few games later in Chicago, but they haven't done it since October 22nd. And Pettersson and Besser in the same game twice against the Ducks and the Sharks, like against 2 of the crappiest teams in the National Hockey League. Like, do it in some big boy hockey. And that just hasn't happened for those guys.
And so much was made in the offseason about this team having to be built differently, having to go and be built for, like, as you just mentioned, big boy hockey. Well, they went out and they got some big boys. They got Kiefer Sherwood, who plays a big game. He hits everything in sight. They got Jake DeBrusk. They got better. And these guys are supposed to be able to go in and help you offensively and what have you. But you're telling me that this Vancouver Canucks team is going to go up against the likes of, we just talked about, the Winnipeg Jets, the Vegas Golden Knights, the Edmonton Oilers in a 7-game series? That's big boy hockey, and the Canucks aren't ready to play that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's pretty much all you really need to know about this Vancouver Canucks hockey team. Something else you should know, though, is Thursday is going to be fun. And if you're sitting here thinking, I want to get together with a group of other Canuck fans and watch the rematch, Vancouver at Edmonton, well, come on down to Greta Bar for the next Canucks Army viewing party. It is coming up on Thursday. It's presented by Fountain Tire. Got a group of people that are going to be watching Vancouver take on Edmonton. Doors open at 5. 6 o'clock is puck drop and probably fireworks at 6:01. There's going to be giveaways and hockey tickets, signed memorabilia, jerseys to be won. $10 ticket gets you access to all the action. It's all in support of One Broken Biker. That's our charity of choice for this event. There's a VIP option as well, 4-person reservation. That includes entry, a Greta burger and beverage, plus an arcade game card. So don't miss out. Come on down. Join us at Greta. Secure your spot now. Nationgear.ca is the website for an action-packed night with the Canucks Army crew. Want to see you at Greta on Thursday. And as we know, it is the rematch. Canucks lose 3-2. Oilers lose 3-2. 3-2 was the score on Saturday night. 3-2 everywhere for these two teams. Now, the Oilers have lost back-to-back games, so they're going to be hot about that. Capitals beat them with just 14 shots on goal.
Yeah, I know.
So, it's one of those nights where the Oilers, I'm sure, liked the way they played, but ultimately they didn't score enough. And McDavid going to be out. Myers is going to miss that one, so neither of the principals involved in the cross-checks will be playing, but there's plenty of other storylines. You know that Connor Garland's going to hear about it. I think he's going to feed off that. Like, certainly people booing Brad Marchand over the years hasn't stopped him from performing in those types of buildings. And I'm not saying that Connor Garland is Brad Marchand, but I think there are guys that use that as motivation and fuel and channel it properly, and I think Connor Garland will.
I think there are guys that can let it get to them negatively, and Connor Garland is the opposite of that. I think that he doesn't let it affect him, right? Like, now, feeding and letting it affect you are two different things, so I think that there's that about him.
Again, this notion that the Oilers are going to be out for Connor Garland because he pinned Connor McDavid down for 10 seconds and got away with a minor penalty. Like, I hope nothing goes sideways in this game, but the reaction out of Edmonton that has carried on, it's been led by the club with that ridiculous statement this afternoon.
We have it. Can we show it? It's incredible. The Edmonton Oilers released this statement today. The Oilers organization is disappointed, and we share in our fans' frustration over the 3-game suspension of our captain, Connor McDavid. We support him through the process. What process? And the organization and our fans look forward to having him back in the lineup versus Seattle next week. I think there are 31 other teams around the National Hockey League that looked at that and said, what the hell are you doing? That's embarrassing by the Oilers.
I would like to think that there is a voice of reason or two in the Alberta Capital. Now, I haven't seen any of it in my timeline for the last 48 hours.
No, there is none right now.
Like, is there not somebody there that's willing to stand up and say, enough? Like, this is nuts. That the and think about this. If the organization had wanted to put out a statement right after the suspension, which came out mid-afternoon on Monday, whatever, still would have looked ridiculous to me, but it would have at least aligned with the timing of the suspension. They had a night to sleep on this, and still there were enough people in that organization that thought this was a good idea and a necessary idea to put out a statement on behalf of the hockey club that, as you said, they support Connor McDavid through what process? He's sitting watching his team for 3 games.
Because he cross-checked someone in the face. Was it a penalty on Connor Garland? Absolutely. Referees didn't call it. But he cross-checked someone in the face. You're going to get that penalty. You're going to get that suspension. I don't care how every day.
Support him through the process. It's just like...
The dude's getting rest. If the Oiler bros were smart enough, this guy's sitting for 3 games. They don't realize that.
So, and I'm on the other side of the Rockies here, but I've seen enough sort of vitriol in my timeline and just on social. Like, there is this idea that the Oilers ought to be out for blood on Thursday.
Yeah,
and
true.
It does take me back, unfortunately. I'm old enough to have been around and covered the Steve Moore, Todd Bertuzzi thing. And I hope that we don't get to anything that resembles that, but I've seen so much of this, somebody better go after Quinn Hughes because Connor Garland dared pin Connor McDavid down for 10 seconds. So, if the fans want to get on Connor Garland, fine. That's all part of the sport. You got to play through hostile atmospheres. But it really feels like Oiler fans are expecting that their team is like this eye for an eye, except that the eye here is that Connor Garland sat on McDavid. Like, I joked on Twitter that the game should just start with Troy Stetcher, the smallest Oiler, getting to sit on Quinn Hughes for 10 seconds, and then everybody's good. If only it was that simple. And so I hope that where, Rick talked here in the last 24 hours about how the noise around JT Miller and everything else has seeped into the locker room. I hope the noise in Edmonton hasn't seeped into their locker room that somebody thinks that on behalf of the great city of Edmonton that they're going to have to rise up here and exact vengeance against the Vancouver Canucks on Thursday, because this thing has gotten completely out of hand. It was fireworks at the end of a hockey game on Saturday. There was a game there. The Canucks need a victory. The Oilers have lost 2 in a row. They need to play some hockey as well. I hope they stick to hockey, but I don't know, man. I have a feeling that this thing is going to get off the rails on Thursday in Edmonton.
Yeah, I think what I do know and what the league has done in the past is the head of officiating is going to call both head coaches, and they're going to get a talking to before the game. We've seen it happen before, where the officials have gone to both coaches and say, listen, we know the volume and we know the magnitude of what has happened over the last 48 hours or since you two have last played. The best player in the world got suspended. Tyler Myers and Connor McDavid they're not playing in this game. We understand both fan bases are angry. We understand this, that, and the other, but just don't be stupid. Play hockey, play within the whistles. And if something happens, I don't think the refs will be afraid of throwing someone out of the game. I just think that that's the way the NHL will want to handle it. It's ugly for the game if you go out and it's just fights all the time and this, that, and the other. But I agree with you. To a certain point, you have to think that it's gotten to the room. I mean, Edmonton's small enough. All you do in Edmonton's hockey. Like that's all there is. It's for,
that has become obvious.
That's literally that's all there is.
If it wasn't already, that's become readily apparent in the last 48 hours or so.
Like, I don't know how many Oiler bros tagged at Oilers as the reason why they had to put out a statement. Like, that's probably had one of the reasons to do about it, right? So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a fun hockey game. Two teams that don't like each other, two teams that have a history, played in the postseason. One without their best player, Leon Draisaitl, their best player, their second best player, literally said today it was suspension, maybe too long for both guys, but it was a suspension. So we'll see what happens.
So Draisaitl's up to 34 because he scored again here, scored 2 the other night. This is the thing, though. Without Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl leads the Oilers with 70 points. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, their next highest scorer, with 27. That's the drop when you take McDavid out of the equation right now.
Yeah.
Evan Bouchard's got 35 points, but you go from Draisaitl at 70 points down to the Nuge with 27, and if you can keep Draisaitl off the scoreboard, and that's easier said than done the way that he's going this year, you stand a chance. And you saw the Canucks held the Oilers to 15 shots on goal. The Canucks did do a lot of good. It was overshadowed, obviously, by what happened at the end of the hockey game. But let's see what happens. Because, again, both these teams need victories. Like, if you're the Vancouver Canucks, you don't want to stub your toe and then have to come home and face the Washington Capitals. And if you're the Oilers, you don't want this thing to grow. You certainly don't want to lose to the Canucks 2 of your last 3 hockey games. And this is the last game they play, by the way. There isn't another one after this. So this is it for the regular season. Maybe they meet in the playoffs, but a lot would have to happen before that. And obviously they met last year in the playoffs, so I not hold my breath for a rematch, but we'll see how it all shakes down. Oilers, even with the loss to the Capitals, a very good team on home ice, 15-8-1. And if you're wondering, John Klingberg's skating with the team, but he's not ready to play. So he won't be in their lineup on Thursday. So we'll see what their lineup looks like, and ultimately we'll see if the Canucks make any changes as well. Canucks only have 12 healthy forwards right now. They sent Lekaramaki down to Abbotsford. I know he scored the winner the other night. Thought it was interesting that Rick Tocchet acknowledged that Atu Ratu had been the player of the week in the AHL, so he was aware of that. They're going on the road. It's only a one-off on the road, but I do wonder if they take an extra body up front, just this Noro that's working its way around the team.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if they added a forward to the mix, and then on defense, you got the 6 that they had tonight. We'll see if Noah Juulsen is any closer, but he's been a week now, so I'm not sure that he'll be ready to play on Thursday. That's something that we didn't really talk about. We mentioned that it wasn't a great night for Quinn, and obviously Phil Hronek on the ice for a couple of those goals as well. Quinn Hughes, end of the night, 26 minutes and 10 seconds, so we've certainly seen him log a lot more ice time than that. Philip Hronek played 23-31, and then you get Soucy and Forbort. I thought Friedman was fine, as I generally do. Like, Mark Friedman as a 6th defenseman in the National Hockey League, he gives you what he can. Like, you're not expecting a whole lot. If you're not expecting a lot from a 6th defenseman, then I do think in a pinch, Mark Friedman can step in, 4th game of the year at this level. And I'm not sure that there's a massive drop from Noah Juulsen to Mark Friedman when he gets into the lineup. So
no.
Friedman was fine.
Yeah.
Played 15 minutes. Otherwise, a relatively empty stat line for him. But you're not looking for him to run the show and be the best player on the ice. He's just out there trying to do what he can. And what an opportunity for him, by the way. I mean, most of his shifts were with Quinn Hughes. Obviously, as they were down in the third period, tied and down, started to juice the defensive pair and played a little more with Philip Hronek in the third than he had earlier in the hockey game. But great opportunity for Mark Friedman to take a few twirls at the very least out there with Quinn Hughes. You know what? It's probably the less we say about the game itself, the better. I don't think we have to drag it out a whole lot more. Just frustration. You could feel it from the coach. You could hear it in the voice of Thatcher Demko across the board. I mean, this was flat out a missed opportunity for the Vancouver Canucks.
Absolutely. And they're going to have to, reboot, look at themselves, have a pretty solid practice, and travel to Edmonton and, get ready for a big game. Right? Because in the hoopla of everything that's going on, there's still a game that needs to be played, and you need 2 points against your division rival.
Well, we will be back to do it. That'll be our next Rink Wide. So, I'm sure there will be storylines. They'll be abundant on Thursday, win or lose for the Vancouver Canucks. And again, let's hope that they're able to stick to hockey and that there isn't a ton of carryover. But I think that there will be. And again, it should be two teams that are angry for a variety of reasons. And for the Canucks, another chance to... I mean, how many bounce-back games can you have in a season, quite frankly? But it just feels like every other game for the Vancouver Canucks is of that variety. But that is going to do it for us here, Rink Wide. Again, if you don't already, follow us on our socials. You can see them all on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. And certainly hit the subscribe button.
Absolutely.
Yeah, leave us a review. We'd like to hear your thoughts. We appreciate all the comments, the super chats as well. The proceeds going to the BC Mental Health Foundation. 3-2, the Buffalo Sabres defeat the Vancouver Canucks. Another frustrating and disappointing night on home ice at Rogers Arena. Elias Pettersson, Phil DiGiuseppe, the goal scorers for the Canucks, but in the end, they needed more. And the Sabres skate away with a 3-2 victory. Atsu and Nick working behind the scenes here, and we appreciate all of their help. For Earth, this is Jeff. 3-2 the final. Sabres over the Canucks. You have been listening and watching Rink Wide Vancouver.